Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Leela Rhodes and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us here at NetCom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We are very excited to host today's webinar event, CND First Look by NetCom Learning, Network Defender Free Course. Presenting today's topic is Tom Updegrove. Tom is an information security expert with over 35 years of experience. He has extensive expertise in computer network security, firewalls, switches, IDS, VPNs, remote access, disaster recovery, and backup planning. He has worked on the creation and deployment of solutions for protecting networks, systems, and information assets for over 10 years for diverse organizations. His training techniques have a proven track record for delivering in-depth knowledge of his practice areas. Now, please bear in mind that this is still just an overview of a very robust topic, and we do offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored towards your specific requirements. If you're interested in further discussion about any of those, you can message us and get in touch with one of our learning consultants through our website at www.netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you will get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. NetCom Learning helps customers build innovative learning organizations by achieving a smarter workforce, adopting change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We have 9 practice areas in which we specialize, and they encompass people, process, and technology training. Today's presentation is from the security practice area. NetCom Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio for security courses, and our upcoming classes include various trainings on Certified Network Defender V2, Computer Hacking Forensic Investigator V10, and many more. Also, private training to teams is available, and those learning plans can be customized to the specific needs of that audience. You can also access a variety of security marketing assets, such as the free 1-hour training, free on-demand training, and blogs by clicking on the available webinar handout. These offerings can also be found with a simple search on our website, www.netcomlearning.com. In this webinar, we will explore and understand the most popular modules in CND, such as network security controls, IDS, IPS sensors, wireless network threats, and much more, along with the Live Lab demonstrations. Now, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started. To start with, you have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. Simply hit the escape key and find the zoom button on the top left corner of your GoToWebinar viewer. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters. Feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters in the questions panel, and we will address them at the end of the session today. Also, to get the best out of today's session, we have included the slides, courses we've talked about, and marketing assets in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer, and you can refer to them to get a better understanding of the topic. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass the time over to Tom to present today's presentation. Tom, you should be able to share your screen now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Leela. I am.
Well, I saw it for a minute and then it went away. There we go.
So you see my CND first look slide?
Yes, I do.
Okay, then away with the show. Thanks for the introduction. And again, my name is Tom Updegrove. I am a certified EC Council instructor, and one of my favorite courses is Certified Network Defender. And I'll tell you why it's my favorite course, because it's comprehensive, especially version 2. Version 1 was a great start. Version 2 just goes into a tremendous number of areas. So let's kind of get started on my next slide here. So what we would like to run through here is a bit about security controls, protocols, devices, some of the tools of some of the devices that are used in network defense. Certainly a big area of network defense is protecting wireless. And wireless is not just Wi-Fi. Today we have so many different forms of wireless communication, from our Ring doorbells, which use a protocol, a wireless protocol called Zigbee, Lo-Fi. There's a tremendous number of new industrial wireless controls.
Here's something I found on the web. According to researchandmarkets.com, according to a new research report.
Isn't it funny? My Alexa picked up on my introduction, wanted to talk as well. So we're going to be monitoring and looking at tools that correlate events and information, policies, risk, vulnerabilities, scanning procedures. Maybe we even have some time to actually play with some tools, because it's kind of like my favorite part. The one thing about the CND course is that it is a kind of a 50-50 course on both lecture as well as hands-on. So you get to really work with the tools of the trade, how they work, and prepare you really for some technical vocational skills. Breakdown of the course is such as Module 1, we will really look at the network attacks and defense strategy, the offense and the defense of the game. Then move into people, processes, and techniques, such as the administrative aspects as to how policies should be implemented. We'll talk a bit about the technical aspects. I mean, this is really the firewalls, the implementation of those, the IDSs, the intrusion protection devices, the ways, the logging and monitoring of those things, network perimeter security, endpoint security, whether it would be over Windows, Linux, or your mobile devices and IoT devices. And, even what isn't covered here is even operational technology, which would be more industrial-based SCADA systems. How we should be applying security from an administrative level. How do we protect our data? Today we consider data is the new oil. AI is the new fire. Enterprise virtual network security. So virtual network security and cloud network security tie together quite well. The whole development of cloud computing is based on virtual computing. And even today, a lot of people will run virtual computers inside of their servers and even workstations. Real easy stuff to do today. Enterprise wireless network security, network traffic monitoring, and logging. This is an important area, because if you don't know what's going on, if you don't know what's happening on your network, what's going in and what's going out, then you're subject to the pitfalls of lack of security. You need to know what is happening, what is going on. Incident response and forensic investigation. More or less, once something does happen, how do we deal with it? Do you have a plan? How do you build these plans? And what's your continuity and disaster recovery approach? Okay, if you haven't really done a fire drill, you're going to be at a loss as how to behave. So these are really important behavioral development tools that will give us the opportunity to deal with chaos when it happens. How do you deal? What happens? Are you ready for ransomware? Are you ready for your system getting hacked? What's your plan going to be? We're going to talk a bit about risk and risk management, what risk is. How do we assess threat? What's the attack surface? And in a bit, we need to be able to predict what risk and threat are very, very, very close, right? Naturally, risk would be lower when the threat is lower. When the threat is higher, certainly risk is going to be higher. Okay. There's some interesting formulas that we do with them, and so I took a selection of various aspects of the Certified Network Defender course, and I have taken those and USB device not ready. I do hope my microphone's working, so I don't know. Not right now. Something's going on here, and we just pretend it's not going on. Yes, still microphone's working. All right, so these terms, very, very important. Assets, threats, threat sources, and where did the threats come from? Threat actors. Threat actor is now a 50-cent term for maybe a dollar term for a hacker. And because the media has kind of really blown the term hacker out of the way, us hackers like the term because we hack life. We hack through everything. I think it's pretty much innate in all of us to try to find other purposes for things or find ways that the MacGyver mentality through life, right? When you don't have a screwdriver handy, you'll find maybe I could use a butter knife, right? Yeah. So the MacGyver approach. But threat actors and threat agents are those who perpetrate and try to penetrate networks, try to steal your data, steal your money if they can. Vulnerabilities are those weaknesses in the system that a threat actor is going to try to exploit. Risk are known and unknown, of course, and attacks are any type of action against those weaknesses. But I'll try to give you a little more defined explanation of each of these, right? So an asset really is anything of interest. It could be the secret sauce, right? The secret formula. It could be software that you're using, software in terms of software that you have in development, as well as software that you're using. Systems, people, data, very, very important area because this is usually one of the targets that threat actors are after. Servers, and so we say that they're tangible and intangible because it may be an espionage or a spy might be really after these assets. So we need to be able to identify the assets so that we know what to protect, what's more valuable, and what should we rate and categorize at a higher level and put more attention towards. Threat is any potential negative event, challenge to our homeostasis, to our stability, would be considered a threat, right? It could be an attacker trying to steal sensitive data, maybe trying to do a denial of service on the system and shut it down. Could be, especially you're running a commercial site where you're doing thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of business per minute or per hour, and you have that site shut down. It's going to be costly and expensive to you. And, sometimes they use social engineering to try to employees into giving up passwords or giving up information that could be detrimental to your stability and security. And of course, you know, infecting systems with malware is just another form in many ways. So we know that the internet and the use of information technology is laced with various types of threats, and we want to become familiar with those threats as to which are the dangers to us, and hence awareness of those elements is first and foremost, and otherwise we're going to be oblivious to it. Threat sources, yes, natural, right? Could be volcanoes. I mean, oddly, it's not odd at all. We just don't think about it. I mean, in the area that I live in the world, I don't come across too many volcanoes, but yet there are people that certainly are faced with those things. One of the ways these threat sources tends to be diminished or humbled in a way is to try to build your data centers in such a way that you're not exposed to these types of natural fires and floods. And you have redundant power systems and backups and so on. Unintentional, the proverbial getting shot in the foot or someone shooting himself in the foot happens. There are accidents. Lazy, I suppose, but certainly untrained or poorly trained or improperly trained in a procedure could happen, that someone erases data, shuts down systems, and often it's really an area of cybersecurity that you're always thinking about the threat agent, the hacker getting in the system, but we find that sometimes it's caused by ourselves. So not intentional. On the other side, you do have the intentional, right? The disgruntled employee that was fired. I don't know about service providers can do that. Certainly, we need to be careful of our data. Contractors, supply chain contractors. Again, now we do get to see the term hacker, right? Hacker's not always a criminal. Terrorist, kind of put into different categories. So there's externals. We have a lot of different categories for them, which we'll try to cover. Okay, but and these are by no means complete lists. Okay, so we could continue to break these areas down. But threat sources need to be understood. It's a nice little breakdown of some of them. And so the threat actors and the agents of threat run from a hacktivist, we usually have a more political agenda. And to prove things for a political or social reason, it could be websites that are related to that. It could be the actual systems be shut down. Criminals, of course, crime's probably one of the biggest. You notice the picture of the criminal holding a bag of money, right? So usually financial gain is really what criminals are after. Okay, an insider threat could be for a number of reasons. It could be money. It could be for a social cause. It could be just postal madness. Someone, you know, that feels marginalized and minimized and just wants to get back. Nation state, probably some of the bigger exploits, the bigger hacks really happen from nation states. Terrorism, we don't see too much, and but it's hard to really, I suppose, distinguish between was the colonial pipeline a nation state attack or was it a terrorist attack? Sometimes it's hard to distinguish between them. Warfare, we haven't really got to that point yet. I guess we could say that the attack on the Iranian centrifuges years ago was kind of a first weaponized attack. I think that a lot of probing and a lot of attempts on infrastructure probably is more geared towards nation state warfare. Certainly we need to be aware of the spectrum, and there's more than this as well. There's terms what we call suicide hacker, which somebody really doesn't give a dang about what's going to happen to them. They're on a mission, whether it was a social, political, commercial, criminal, or allegiance to a particular cause. And we need to know that these things can happen. Vulnerabilities. All right, so it's a weakness, and it's a weakness in the system. It could be, we could say the existence of a weakness in an asset that could be exploited, but we didn't know what those vulnerabilities are. Is it, for instance, are we running older legacy systems? If you're involved in cybersecurity, you know to look for the common vulnerability exposures that are generated every day. And those vulnerabilities give us some insight into what problems are out there, what weaknesses are out there, so that we can build a defense against them. And so it's important to know what's happening on a global level. One of the things that we don't see back here in the sources of threats are the threat databases, okay? So that there are groups that are compiling information, and that information allows us to draw certain inferences as to what is happening right at this moment. And from those threat databases, we can plan and be more aware of what probabilities are going to happen, what risks are out there. Okay, so risk actually comes from a Greek term that the root of it was a sailor who is aware of the rocks below the surface of the water as getting close to the coast. And that's why I throw up this picture of a ship. And so naturally, if you don't know what the risks are, if you haven't charted it out, haven't explored, okay, then the probability of crashing into them is going to be much higher. The more information that you have, the more knowledge you have of the potential, the less risk you would have. And so risk refers to the potential loss or damage that can occur when a threat or an asset exists in the presence of a vulnerability that can be exploited. Okay? Great definition. Attack. Attack equals a motive. What is a motive? Well, it could be financial, it could be social, it could be financial. It all depends. A method, the tools, techniques, and procedures that that one is going to take their passion and exploit that weakness, that vulnerability. And an attack is something you know when it's going on. And you don't need to refer to the formula. Okay, we are under attack, and you'll know it. What kind of attacks happen? And so again, cyber network defense is about knowledge, is about awareness. Awareness of your environment, what can happen, and then the potentials of the types of attacks that can happen. And so the first is usually a reconnaissance attack. And so then reconnaissance attacks usually involve some type of network scanning. And so there are tools. The big one is Nmap. It's the one that we like to work with in the course. And as I said, that course is really hands-on. Okay, so two of my favorite tools are Nmap and Wireshark. Nmap is the writing tool and Wireshark is the reading tool. And why I say that is because Nmap injects these into a network. Okay? It talks to the network. Okay? It looks for responses from the network. Where Wireshark is a sniffer, it listens to things on the network. Okay? We can gain things from both. Okay? It takes a little longer listening, but listening is a skill. It's an art, right? Even in conversation. If you're always talking, okay, and never getting any, waiting for the responses, then maybe you're just full of hot air. And one thing I like about an interactive class is that I get a chance, to get feedback from people. So we have no chat session going here. So anyway, man in the middle. Okay, man in the middle happens many, many, many ways. Okay, so that's one we have to really be careful of. And usually what tends to minimize the man in the middle attack is encryption. Okay, if we can encrypt our data, for instance, if you ever been listened to a conversation with two people speaking a foreign language, I have no idea what they're saying. Okay, they're talking in a weird tongue. Okay, well, that's what man in the middle does. It prevents people from understanding the language that you and the person you're communicating with or the group you're communicating with, interpreting and understanding what your communication spectrum is. Password attacks. Password attacks probably one of the biggest that are out there though, okay? Because password spraying and password cracking, password guessing is constantly going on. Passwords have to go away because we're just making too many passwords. We're all overwhelmed with our password complexity and password volume. And remember, having tools to in forms of privilege escalation simply means you want to go to the head of the class. Okay? You want to get as much privilege, as much rights to the system as you can. DNS poisoning attack, talk about that a bit. So the domain name service has been around since the beginning of the internet. And the domain name service can actually shut down the network. We're making some changes today to a DNS by encrypting it more so, but that can cause a complete shutdown of the internet if someone exploits it properly. Our address resolution protocol can be manipulated in numbers of ways. It can be spoofed, which means you can fake it, intentionally so. ARP just runs on the first protocols, and it's how your network cards all can communicate to a network layer. Some others, DHCP, so the Dynamic Host Control Protocol. I mean, this is the service that gives out IP addresses on your network. It also is how you get an IP address, a dynamic address from your internet service provider. Starvation attack is just preventing you from getting an address, which means that you won't be able to get it on the network because you won't have an address. A DHCP spoofing attack is a way of masking or pretending to be another IP address. It might be that you have some type of IP address firewall scheme that only allows certain addresses in. Well, if I knew what that range of addresses were and I pretended to be one of those IP addresses that you allow in, I would then be allowed in. MAC, so the media access control codes. So these codes are stamped on the actual network card itself, and it's possible to mimic them, to spoof those. Intentionally, a consumer-based router will allow you to change the MAC address because a lot of times, at least in the past, ISPs would hard code the MAC address of the device, the device they gave you. You know, that all-in-one router, modem, router, firewall, Wi-Fi box that you got, you know, had a specific MAC address, and they knew what that address was. So that if you bought something from, say, Best Buy and you replaced it, sometimes you had to put in the registered MAC address. Okay? So there are reasons to do it. So it's not prevented. MAC spoofing isn't something that's going to happen really, you know, can happen in any which way. There's no way to prevent it. Network-based denial services. The denial of service attacks are simply ways of shutting down systems, knocking you offline. Again, more serious. Well, it's serious for anybody, really, but sometimes we do it ourselves. We create our own denial service, and by new equipment, by misconfiguring the equipment, and nothing worse than self-inflicted gunshot wound. Malware, very prevalent today. We don't see too much of virus, but we definitely see a lot of various types of worms and viruses, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. Okay, the APT, so the Advanced Persistent Threat. Okay, so these are usually crime gangs and nation state. They persist for a long time. Somebody gets in the system and doesn't make a lot of noise. They gather intel. This is usually how the CEO wire transfer fraud happens. This is really what happened really with SolarWinds and Microsoft and Connect, wasn't Connect, was Kaseya. Someone gets in the system and they're there for months and they've got a tremendous amount of intel. Sometimes they use it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes no one was wiser to it. It's so, but because of the way the ABT works, it's a serious problem. So the Recon attack, right? Typically the Recon is by, and it could be again active and passive. Recon can be not only network based, but it can be socially based. Before ever turning your computer on and connecting and sending out some type of a probe to maybe the outside interface of the company, you want to get as much information as you can about the target. Who are the C-level executives? What are their interests? What's the company do? What's their valuation? What's the nature of their business? So by gathering as much information as you can about that, you're more apt to be able to say, concoct some type of a email campaign where that you can, let's say that the CEOs were big into golfing, and you send them some invitations to a golfing outing to benefit, say, disabled veterans. Okay? And you get a response back, and then you would send a, once you have some type of dialogue going, you then send them some type of a malformed email that gets a link they can click, that's going to download some maybe some type of a listener that allows you to get a little more information, to get a little more deeper into the system. And then that's how simply through understanding your target and having that information at hand, you're able to develop a much better attack. So reconnaissance, again, from the network side, we use a tool such as Nmap to try to understand the services, the live host, and then the services those hosts are offering. With enough targeting, enough probing into the system, we can determine the versions of the services, okay? And then by looking up those versions, we can determine what type of vulnerabilities they have, what type of CVs, and then again, what types of attacks to really utilize to exploit those weaknesses, those vulnerabilities. Okay, so reconnaissance attacks, okay, basically where it all starts. Okay, this is how you map out the network, okay, map out the employees, map out management, map out everything you can. You build this dossier for months, and it makes a much simpler, much more pointed, much more potent attack on the system. Network sniffing, again, you can sniffing usually is done internally on the network. There's some way in there. So sniffing is a way that we gather information without being able to show our face, really show our presence, and much harder to detect someone who's just listening in a passive state. So the less presence, the better. Wireshark is one of those tools that in itself you could spend a week really learning about. How they recommend really getting this tool down, learning how to utilize it. There are other snippers like TCP dump. There are other ways, Colosoft CAPTCHA. There are other tools. Okay, but I would say it's one of the most, and it's totally free and open source. It is by and large one of the most, that and Nmap, about two of the most downloaded programs on the internet. The man-in-the-middle attack happens in many, many ways. Right here is just an example of someone in the middle of a connection between a web server and a user. This could happen, say, at Starbucks, and that you connected. Sometimes they call this the evil twin. You connected to what you thought was the Starbucks Wi-Fi connection, and you actually connected to someone sitting there with a laptop that's got both a connection to the internet and he's transmitting. He's got an SSID that you can connect to. Sometimes this is done with a Stingray device on a cellular phone. Sometimes it's done with a Bluetooth man in the middle. There's many, many, many ways this is done. One of the ways this is blocked is through encryption. But even then, it's possible to get scammed and accept the bogus security certificates. Password attack, as I said, many, many, many ways. Brute forcing is simply trying as many combinations as you can. Dictionary attack, typically you will load a dictionary up with common terms, and you have a tool that one is John the Ripper. And John the Ripper will just take a dictionary and keep trying. And some of the things that can slow it down, certainly a system can lock itself out, maybe after 5 tries. But there's a lot of web services that don't have lockouts in them, and so that people keep doing it. Sometimes they just steal the database passwords, and then they can do an offline attack. There are combinations. I mean, this is a great little slide, because they're sometimes guessing. Sometimes you can sit at a user's desktop and just from the type of pictures and information that they have in their surroundings, in their environment, gather what that password might be. Sometimes knowing more about the user. Could be a birthday, could be an address. A lot of people will do things that they know, and so it's a real skill. Today, AI and cameras are even make it even easier. It's been shown that with a camera and a microphone, listening to the way people type, sometimes you can record as to what those passwords are. And so what are called side channel attacks. And so it's combinations of things that are a little more sophisticated, but we need better methods of authentication than passwords today. Privilege escalation. So just as the slide shows, we want to be able to move from a user, or usually you get access to a machine through some type of weakness. It's a system level access, and we would love to get up to super user, super admin, admin level. Certainly will give us more rights, but there are ways it's done. We're going to see that there are ways other than getting maybe that account. Sometimes there's a form of directory traversal that we can get. Maybe we got access to the FTP systems, a lot of times FTP is very easy to crack. And from there, we might be able to download the ANSI password file, know all the users, the shadow file, and maybe know all the passwords. Yeah. DNS poisoning. So usually the way DNS poisoning works. So DNS works in a couple different levels. There is a host file usually right on your machine. That's the first thing your computer looks at. A virus or some type of malware usually will attack that, and so that it will rewrite or add something to the host file that when you're looking up, say, www.microsoft.com, it redirects you to another site that looks like it, a fake website. That so that is the DNS. So there's the host file, there's the DNS cache that's in the web browser, there's the DNS server that's on your local network, there's the DNS service and server that is you may be using your ISP for domain name service, right? So what is DNS? It is taking an IP address and resolving it to a common name or a vanity name like www.microsoft.com or Microsoft.com or CNN or whatever. Could be, mywebsite.com. So it can be manipulated relatively easily. Today we have some tools that help us to override that. So I recommend looking into that and developing it. But the goal here is to become aware that this is an area where people do what they call drive-by downloads. You think you went to a particular site, but yet, your machine, maybe even pull down some spyware even. Which is just, information harvesting, to know what you're doing and how to better target you with that. Serious stuff. ARP poisoning usually happens locally on the network, but the address resolution protocol really takes the MAC address. The MAC address is a hard-coded address in the network interface, in the NIC, as we call it, which usually half of it is the manufacturer and the other half is a unique code. So by manipulating that, we can do certain types of attacks so that in this case, the attacker pretends that the attacker is Bob and represents the face of Alice to Bob and represents the face of Alice to Bob. They both think that they're talking to each other, but the attacker's in the middle. The attacker is actually doing a man in the middle this way. And so that's one possible way of doing ARP poisoning. We need to be aware of it. DHCP starvation attack. Sometimes people do this accidentally, or they'll do a in this case, they're throwing out fake DHCP requests and overwhelming the DHCP server and exhausting the pool of IP addresses. Okay? I've seen this happen sometimes, just really a poorly developed DHCP service. Sometimes it'll happen in a cheap consumer device, like a Wi-Fi device. But you need to be aware of it. You need to understand how these protocols work, if you're going to prevent them. But I've also seen the inverse, where someone puts in a new, say, Wi-Fi repeater that has a DHCP server built into it, but is giving out a different range of IP addresses, and the user is complaining all the time that, I don't know, the IP address keeps changing. Okay? You know, and instead of being on a 10.1.10. 8.1.1, something like that. So that can be just as much a problem. I mean, I usually see that with, say, an untrained, poorly trained network technician. It's usually, the nephew of the CEO, something like that. DHCP spoofing would be someone putting in a rogue. So this is typically, it is an intentional approach, someone sticking it in there, but what I was describing was an unintentional DHCP spoofing attack, a DHCP spoofing accident. And what this will create is a denial of service, and they won't be able to connect to the corporate server. They won't be able to connect to the gateway. They won't be able to get internet access, okay, and they'll be off the network. Max spoofing, okay, again, this has to do with ARP as well, okay, so that sometimes back spoofing is that there may be some type of a lockout. Sometimes people will do in their Wi-Fi systems only allow certain MAC addresses. Well, if I could sniff the network as to what addresses are being allowed, I would then be able to do the same. I would be able to use a MAC address in the range of allowed ones, and I would then have no problem authenticating. Denial of service. So when it's one machine, it's a DOS attack. Denial of service. Sometimes, again, this is self-inflicted. Sometimes not. So network-based denial of service could be done simply without breaking down the three-way handshake in TCP. The initial connection between computers is a what they call a synchronized packet, a SYN. The receiver acknowledges that and sends us a SYN back, and that's acknowledged. And it's akin to a phone call where I dial the number, call somebody up. Ring, ring. Alice answers, and Alice says hello, and I don't reply back. Alice goes hello, hello, hello. Well, for the time that Alice is hanging on there, waiting for my reply back, Alice has the phone tied up. Now, if 10 people did that, Alice would be spending 10 times that amount of time just in a pattern, and no one else would be able to actually get a call in. And this is kind of what happens in these TCP SYN floods, that a horde of senders, usually it's a botnet, will send numbers of SYN attempts to a particular system, and that system will open up a connection and then wait for the reply. It will wait a certain period of time, then drop. Okay, but naturally 500, 1,000 come in, it's going to tie up and it's going to suck up resources on that machine. The same thing happens with UDP, which is another form of connection. ICMP, which is ping attack. So sometimes ICMP floods. So there are different ways to overwhelm operating systems with protocol-based attacks. Distributed denial of service is much more serious, because this is when we get large numbers of machines, hundreds of thousands. There was an attack that happened some years back to a researcher by the name of Brian Krebs. And Brian had written an article condemning a couple of Russian hackers. He wrote some bad words about them. I guess whoever took it took offense at it and attacked his website. But the website and it was just, more like a WordPress site, running a GoDaddy. It wasn't a big deal. He did have Akamai DOS protection, but the attack came from 100,000 Daewoo network video recorders that were exploited through some type of a firmware update that turned them into TPC SYN flooding machines. The degree of the attack had never been seen. The volume of it was so bad that Akamai actually said that it would cost them $100,000 a day to divert the attack. So what they did was they just he just shut the site down and waited for it to bypass. The case is that it can get expensive to have this type of defense, and it can happen. You can set up a level of defense either on your network, which is expensive. You can use your ISP, but you need to prepare for it. You can use a third party like Akamai to actually protect you from it. Today, with software-defined networking, again, it still is an expensive option, and you have to look at really the return of your investment in terms of is it worthwhile to spend that money versus actually just surviving the onslaught and attack. Advanced persistent threats, as we talked about, these are usually done by nation state or very high level crime gangs. Sometimes they're the same. Sometimes crime gangs will actually operate on their own and then actually contract for a nation state. Kind of crazy the way it works. Huh? They're going to do their reconnaissance, their research, gather information. And from the information, they can mount an attack, establish a foothold. They're very minimal. Okay? Just a way in. What is that simple, email to the CEO that that we got to reply. We want to develop persistence, which means that we now pull some more tools in there. We create a backdoor quietly. We now from there start to do our scanning and sniffing to develop more resource access. We get greater and more lateral expansion. So sometimes the enhancement of our privileges is not necessarily going vertical. Sometimes it is going on a lateral level. So we're moving through systems basically on the same privilege level, but we're gathering more information as we do that. And, that allows us to do that kind of escalation of privileges and gather specific data as to what we're going to do. It's going to be exfiltrated. And why would it be encrypted? So that we don't really know what's going on. And this is why it's important to understand what is going in and out of your network. And why do I have a connection with, say, some remote area of Asia or Africa, or Middle East that I don't do business with? And so we need to be able to at least know who we're talking to, not what the actual information in the communication is about. Okay? And they're going to maintain presence as long as they can. Okay? They may have been in there and gone. Sometimes with the more recent ransomware attacks, it's not like this thing happens all at once. Okay, usually it's a persistent threat. Someone's been in there for a while. Okay, knows which buttons to push. Okay? and then mounts their attack. They have all the data already, so encrypting it is just the first step. Should you refuse to pay the ransom, then comes the next threat, which is blackmail. Well, we're going to release this important, either proprietary information or information that is going to cause reputational damage and harm. Bad enough, we have to deal with all of that on the network. Even more serious is what's happening on the application level. And I think we're getting our networks pretty well together, but our application level stuff, oh my God. And so the SQL injection attack, cross-site scripting, parameter tampering. These are just the commonest, okay? This is a good list. Yes, we look at all these things as a network defender. Directory traversal, cross-site request forgery, application level DOS attack, denial of service attack, session hijacking. Session hijacking happens on both the network layer as well as on the application level. And this is kind of a fair slide, but you should see there the select from. Normally, my login box might look like that, but what it looks like in computer talk is select came from user options where user equals some name. And as here is updating the password, okay, where the user is administrator. So it's possible to send a well-formed SQL, the system query language command from the login box, or actually from a command line. There's a lot of ways to do this. Okay, so you develop this this SQL query that can extract maybe the user database or delete a database. Okay, many ways done. There's blind SQL injection. There's union SQL injection. It's a very sophisticated skill set. We do a lot of it in the Certified Network Defender course. We've got some great web servers that we can kind of deploy. But it takes a lot of practice because there's a lot of different database languages out there. So you need to become aware of all of them. Okay, so great skill. If you're a SQL administrator or a code writer, okay, you got a leg up. And, but it's somewhere in the 15 to 19%. Why it's number one? Because it's still happening. And there are a lot of applications out there that are vulnerable to it. And this is what an ethical hacker does. An ethical hacker tests these systems to make sure. And you need to be able, as a network defender, you need to be able to test these systems to make sure that your web applications are not vulnerable to SQL injection. Cross-site scripting, on the other hand, is entirely different. Okay, so cross-site scripting can, as a site where you can implant things into the web code that allows a hacker to gain access to a victim. Right. In this case, the hacker injects injects code into the website with malicious script, usually something JavaScript. Right. The victim visits a trusted website. You weren't driven to, or pushed to some other, redirected some other site. The actual site itself has some potential for cross-site scripting exploitation. And the victim's browser executes malicious script and unknowingly forwards the desired information. It could be the session token. And usually that's the one we're after. Sometimes they use the cookie as a session ID, and so it all depends. But what happens is the hacker now has the username and password, okay, or access to the site where they can do whatever. Not good on a banking website. Parameter tampering happens in a couple different ways. Sometimes, if you notice in the Juggy Bank there, I can tell that this is one of the CND actual lab exercises. Okay? But the 2500 has been changed to maybe 15. So instead of debiting my account for 2,500, only take out 1,500. Okay? But by manipulating everything after that question mark, where it says www.juggybank.com customer.asp, and if you know anything about webcode.asp, that's definitely a Microsoft IIS web server. Okay, everything after the question mark now is a kind of specific quote looking at the profile. So you might try looking at a different profile, maybe profile 20 or 19. See if you can get access. People will manipulate that information right in the URL to see what kind of information we get. Sometimes it's interesting what you can put in there and what you get out. So people will play around just at this level. Okay? Or they might use a tool like Burp Suite, which is if I said 3 tools that you want, Nmap, Wireshark, and something like Burp Suite. There are others. But that's my choice. The second here is hidden fields. And so a person might actually buy something for $600 and change that price to $60. Okay, I've even seen it on some really poor developed sites where they put in a -60, so that not only did you get the phone, but you got $60 back, okay? Maybe $600 back. And it depends on how poorly written. And this would be a really bad commercial site to have. Okay? But code is only as good as it's written, okay? And code is just has an enormous number of flaws and holes and zero-day exploits in it. Directory traversal, if you look at the foodie.com/menus, !menu equals, and you see that .. that's a directory traversal. Okay, what they're trying to do is to get to the Etsy password list so that they can pull out the number of users. The passwords aren't actually there, they're in the Etsy shadow, but that's I've seen this happen with WordPress and Joomla, and a lot of because what it allows you to do is to get to some of the plugins that are there. So there's some of the simpler ways to do this type of exploitation. Very, very possible, because the web has to give you information. You're simply throwing information at the front end. The front end is throwing information at the back end. The back end goes, hey, you asked for it, here you go. Cross-site request forgery attack. And so here the hacker actually sends some type of a token to the victim. The victim actually uses that token when they click a link. And not only does the victim then go to their banking website, but it allows the hacker into the site as well. Okay, so the hacker kind of leads. There's a lot of ways these are kind of done, but usually it's done through an email. And I see us right now about 12 after. And Leela, should we take a break at this point?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I'm sure everyone would love to take a moment to stretch their legs and just, how about 10 minutes? Does that sound all right?
8 minutes is great.
Okay, let me pull up that timer. We'll take 10 minutes to just stretch our legs, grab a drink, use the restroom, whatever you need to do real quick. Let me share my screen and start that timer. And we are going. Thank you.
Super. Thank you.
Wonderful. That is our 10-minute break. Are you back with us, Tom?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
I will go ahead and pass back over the presentation rights to you, and we can jump right back into it when you're ready.
Okay. See my screen, right?
Yes, I can.
Super. Okay, thanks. All right, so we left off here with the cross-site request forgery. Yeah. Devious little exploit. So these are what I would consider a application level denial of service attack. Okay, so when you make a request to the website, for instance, you're in your browser and you're going to say Amazon, you want to do something. Okay? When you click that link, and you're looking for say you know, the best version of an electric toothbrush you can find, it sends a GET request to the website. Of course, it'll have more information in there, but it's still a GET request. Okay? And the server will take that information and respond with the information that you asked for, if it has it. And of course, if I send thousands of GET requests at a time, it's going to overwhelm the server itself, and nothing's going to happen at all. The traffic will be really slow. And this is what happens. Sometimes we have issues with flood attacks simply because many people are requesting information at the same time. I think when the healthcare.gov website first went up, I mean, sometimes people just don't plan really for the kind of scalability that a site might need or the application needs, so they can't handle the traffic. And so, you know, these are things we learn certainly, you know, when we're developing and planning and implementing different types of applications. Session hijacking. So as I said, session hijacking works in two ways. In this case, the attacker tries to steal the session ID. I mean, there's numbers of ways it's done. If you've ever walked away from a computer left it unattended, or didn't log out, or didn't close the session. Let's say you were at a hotel and you were checking your webmail, and you just minimized the screen. Well, somebody could then just continue with your session. So that's one way. There's another type of hijacking that happens on the network level, where a person can jump into a session. Works a little differently, but so hijacking, session hijacking happens both on network level as well as on the application level. So other vector attacks, okay, social engineering, talking somebody into giving up information, okay? Or it could be something as simple as going through the trash, what they call dumpster diving. Other attacks could be tailgating, following somebody in, yeah, or using their their identification or passcode. Okay? Email attacks, let's face it, huge. Not only from the spamming level, you know, but also people getting into your email account. Okay, because one of the best ways to gather information about a company is to pretend to be someone else. I've been in on an exploit with a this was a title company, who provides information between a buyer and seller in real estate. And is the title clear? Is there any problems with the title? And so on. But a lot of times the title agency will act as the go-between between the buyer and seller, and where to send the down payment money. And wiring the down payment money used to be a big practice. But criminals have learned how to get into, and usually these companies are using very simple public email systems with a simple password. So they do a password attack first. They gain access to the email, and then they simply look at what buyers and sellers are communicating to the title company. Somewhere along the line, the buyer instructing them where to send the down payment. And the poor, unsuspecting buyer sends a down payment, okay, shows up at a closing, and then is asked for the down payment. Seller never got the money, title company never got the money, and person's out 10,000. I've seen as high as $750,000 in wired money. I mean, that's just one way. You know, there's the CEO wire fraud. The kind of information people can get through email, okay, is very personal. A lot of information, you know, and a lot of us sends SMS messages, MMS, you know, messages. We send information. Myself, I make it a habit of only anything that's personal information, anything that related to passwords, anything related to confidential information, okay, has to be encrypted. Okay, my policy. Okay, and it might be something stupid like somebody wants a password reset or something. It's encrypted if it's going in an email. Okay. Mobile device attacks, huge. Okay, and you know, let's face it, there are more mobile devices than there are computers, and everybody has a mobile device. Prolific. It's harder to tell what's going on in a mobile device. We're using SMS messaging, right? And very easy to click a link in an SMS that will take you to a website that could be a fraudulent website, or download something. So I'm surprised mobile device exploits isn't as big as it is. We see the start of that because we're only on the threshold of the connected home, connected office, and people starting to, you know, as everything starts to now come online, including your appliances, it's here. Wireless attacks. As I said, there are many forms of wireless, but people either guessing or cracking passwords, getting into a wireless system. One of the easiest ways to get in, because you don't have to be in the building. You just have to have access to the signal. Wireless is, you know, certainly different. It's, you know, it's a lot harder to protect. And there are a lot of different radio signals. You know, anywhere from the remote you have to start your car. And have you ever seen the movie Ghost Dog? Okay, he goes around just with a scanner, finding the signals that would open a car and then start it. Okay, you could only steal, you know, cars that had that type of technology. Okay? As the automobile becomes more connected, more and more, we're going to see more and more wireless exploits. Okay? A lot of us have no idea how that works. Okay, we just like the fact that it is, you know. But I don't care if it's a access control system for door locks to getting in your vehicle to opening your front door. Cloud-specific attacks. And, the cloud is here. We use it, and we've been using it, right? If you have a Hotmail account or Yahoo account, you've been using cloud-specific technology. But because when you go to the cloud and left your local network, rather than having maybe 20, 100, 500 people having access, you now have what I think it's 5 billion internet users. So if that is a cloud-enabled application, it now has access to, or 5 billion people now can try to log into that. These are just some areas. I'll just run through them briefly. Data breach and loss, abusive and nefarious use of cloud services. Somebody gets access to your account. Okay? Insecure interfaces and APIs, insufficient due diligence, shared technology issues, unknown risk profiles. Because a lot of times in cloud, we spin up machines, we create machines, and they become orphaned. Okay, there's some pretty crazy statistics on the number of orphan devices out there, or stuff that's in the cloud that is unencrypted, clear text passwords. Okay, nuts. Unsynchronized system clocks go. In itself, that's shooting yourself in the foot. But if somebody could disrupt your system clock, okay, it's possible to create a denial of service. Inadequate infrastructure design and planning is too small, and maybe it's too big. Maybe you're spending too much money. And it all leads down to number 37. The economic denial of sustainability attack, which means you can't pay your bill. What happens when you can't pay your bill? Well, your services are cut off. Well, you don't pay your electric, game services are cut off. Well, if somebody gets access to your account and starts spinning up machines, and believe me, they do. We've seen this in Office 365. That people were not using two-factor authentication, rogue entities, rogue actors get into the account, create new domains, create new users, okay, and then utilize them. Okay, but every time they generate a new domain, that's a cost. Okay, and now that they spin up, and, somebody's not really watching the store; they're spinning up machines and using the machines for, for illegal purposes. It's possible you could lose your operations security. You could lose your entire database and contact list, all of your data, if you're not managing it properly. Malicious insiders, somebody has access to the account, could then delete. Illegal access to cloud systems, and one way or another. Loss of business reputation due to co-tenant activities. So this gets into an area of law, though. Sometimes if somebody could get access to my machine or your machine, could they get access to my machine if we're co-tenants? Or what if my co-tenant now is brought in for some type of e-discovery for kiddie porn? Okay? How is that dealt with? So this is all stuff that's dealt with in your service level agreements case, and this is all really comes under what we consider cloud service, provider, or it's cloud service security. Natural disasters, hardware failure, supply chain failure. Okay, how about supply chain exploitation? Okay, well, it's a big one today, isn't it? Modifying network traffic, isolation failure. More or less, are you isolated from another party? Okay? There's a lot of co-tenancy going on. Cloud provider acquisition is the technology proprietary. What's your service level agreement telling you? Management interface compromise. Somebody got in your management interface and you didn't have it protected. Authentication attacks, VM level attacks, more or less. Is it possible from the hypervisor to get in there? Lock-in is another one of these cases where you have a 3-year contract, you want to leave, but you have to pay, you're only in your 2nd year and you got to pay the remaining amount. And that this is why your service level agreements really need to be vetted by a knowledgeable attorney. And licensing risk, loss of governance, loss of encryption keys. Okay, who's escrowing the keys there? Yeah, we know that encryption is the way to protect it. It's a big area in cryptocurrency. People have lost their keys and lost their money because they can't unlock their cold storage. Okay? Risk of changes of jurisdiction. So What if you've got data in the EU and you've got some issues where you've got to deal with both the local laws and the EU laws at the same time. Theft of the computer equipment, and it's always a big one. And not so much, for your laptop, but it could be you've got the encryption keys there, right? Cloud service termination or failure because you didn't pay your bill, maybe subpoena or e-discovery, as I mentioned. Improper data handling and disposal. And anybody dealing with compliance knows that that's one of the big areas you got to deal with. Loss of modification of backup data. Loss or modification of backup data. And so how many times we see it a lot in tape backup and even hard drive backup. And so one of the big things in backup and disaster recovery planning is a scheduled recovery to test the system to make sure that you can bring the data back. Compliance risk, compliance liability. The EDOS game, as I mentioned before, lack of security, architecture, and accounts being hijacked. Okay? A lot of problems in cloud computing. It's just as easy to get exploited using the cloud. It's even more so, I think so. If, though, a cloud system is engineered and implemented properly, okay, it can be as secure as a local system. Okay? Attack methods. Okay, so this is just, you need to know this side. So this is really, I think you'll see a little red teaming. So this is red teaming stuff. What we said, reconnaissance. Okay? I need to put my feelers out and know what's out there. Reconnaissance is not always about the technology system first. It's about people. It's about understanding what the target actually is. Scanning is looking for live host, and scanning can take a lot of time. So we try to find the systems that are active on the network first. Once we find the live host, we then try to scan for ports, find out what services. Then we try to understand what those ports are. Once we gain an understanding of that, we can then look for vulnerabilities, and then we develop our battle plan, our attack plan. We attack, we gain access. Once we gain access, it might be at a very low level, we're going to try to elevate our access. Once we've elevated our access, we're going to maintain access. We don't have to be in there, but we want to leave at least a way that we can get back in. It should be. There are some simple things like NetCat, which is a type of tool that can create a listener. And the last thing we do is we clear our tracks. Okay? By clearing tracks, we erase logs. We try to make it look as if we were never there. On the other side, you want to look at those ways that one accesses and then being able to cut them off at the pass, so to say, right? So in reconnaissance, you want to be looking for someone probing the network. Okay, are you getting unsolicited SIMs that from strange places, or from the same strange place? Okay, is someone creating a payloads? Are they trying to drop some type of something into the system? Can we cut them off at that point? How are they delivering it? And what are our vulnerabilities? Okay, the only way to really understand that is to do a true vulnerability assessment of your system, and even further a penetration test. And often these two get confused as if they're the same thing, but a vulnerability assessment does assess for vulnerabilities, okay? And we assume that those exploitations exist and the weaknesses are there. The penetration test takes it to the next step and says, yes, okay, you try to actually exploit the vulnerability, to prove that it is a weakness. Okay, you document it, okay, and then you develop a way to remediate those vulnerabilities, so that you go back and you pen test again. And right after the exploit, they're going to pull in more better tools, more sophisticated tools, so that they can do. They're going to be talking to a command and control server somewhere. That's important to know that that's going on. And that's where the threat database comes in, because the command and control servers are known and they're being discovered. You know, they're not known, they're being discovered. So, and 99% of the time, we can see that that communication to that particular IP address is a known command and control server. And of course, they're going to, from that point, run some actions on and try to achieve certain exploitation of data, or try to monetize the information in some way that maximizes it. The MITRE ATT&CK framework. Okay, so this is just again just a list. So there's a lot of sources out there. The MITRE ATT&CK, you know, again, a globally accessible knowledge base of tactics and techniques. It's a great one to check out. Just go to MITRE.com. Goal of network defense. What is the goal of network defense? Okay. To protect, preserve, and continue. You'll see the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It is important for us to keep. Okay? Right, so the ultimate goal of network defense is to protect an organization's information, systems, and network infrastructure from unauthorized access, misuse, modification, service denial, any degradation or disruption. And we use information assurance principles to attain defense in depth. And so AI acts as an enabler for an organization's security activities to protect and defend. And this is what Certified Network Defender is preparing you to do. Again, the CIA triad, very, very important. Right? So confidentiality would be if I told you a secret, you don't tell it to anybody else. Okay? The way that we communicate, normally that would be my mouth to your ear, but it could be via an email message. Okay, so it would be an encrypted email message. Okay, so it's not disclosed, nor one way that confidentiality is exploited is through eavesdropping. Right, somebody's listening in on the conversation, or somebody is man in the middle in the conversation. Okay, so we need to make every effort we can to make sure that our communication is confidential. Integrity means that communication has not been changed in any way. I'm sure you've all played the whisper down the lane game, you know, where I tell a person a story, they tell the next, and say we go down a chain of 10, 12 people. By the time he gets to the end, would the story be the same as the story I told the first person? Okay? No, it's going to change slightly. And well, with data, we don't want that to happen. We want the integrity of the data to be exact. Okay? And this is where the term or the concept of hashing comes in. Hashing is a form of encryption whereby I can take a fixed length document, let's say a Word doc that had 100 words in it. And I run it through a hashing algorithm, and it will come back, okay, with a number. And if it was an MD5, it'd be like a 32-bit number. And if I change one letter, one space, anything, add a dot, I will get an entirely different hash out of that. And often you'll see that for things that you download, you'll see an MD5 hash for that. And what that's saying is that the MD5 hash for the file that's on that the repository, when you download it and run that through the same MD5 hash, that hash better be the same or it's been changed. Its integrity has been altered. And so we want to make sure integrity stays the same. Hashing is a big part of the way blockchain works now. That's why they say blockchain is immutable. And in many ways it is. And availability simply means that I get my data or my information, my communication, okay, at the rate that I need it at the time I need it. Okay. So very, very important that availability is there. Today, the CAA triad has had a couple new additions, non-repudiation, which means that you can't deny, you sent me the message, you can't deny that that message came from you. Authentication is just a way of assuring the identity of that user. And so this is a way AAA systems where they authenticate, they authorize, okay, and they account for. And so, you know, these are things that we have added to the CAA triad now. It's a quintuple. Benefits: we protect our information. We comply with government industry specific regulations. This is only going to get more in depth. Now we have to comply with insurance requirements. And it used to be a couple of years ago, everybody was allowed to do a self-assessment. Okay. Now we're kind of moving out of the self-assessment because people can kind of fudge on the self-assessment, so they need third parties. This is a big area for a certified network defender, that they can do third-party compliance, which satisfies the requirement for the insurance industry. Or it may be government. Look at PCI. It is a standard. It's not government. It's industry. It's an industry standard. But if you don't satisfy the requirement for PCI compliance, you could lose your right to do credit card processing. Okay? I've even seen fines, which is bizarre. But HIPAA for sure. Health protection, the Health Privacy Act, you will get fined if you do not comply. And so these are big areas, and you may just be a compliance manager. I mean, that could be your area of cybersecurity. And you ensure secure communications with clients and suppliers. This needs to be checked and double checked, right? Reduce the risk of being attacked, okay? Because your information is not so be leaked out, right? And in that you can gain competitive edge over competition because you have secure services. Okay? A good defense is very, very important. And a good defense in our case is better than a good offense, okay? Because other than the fact that you're a red teamer and a pen tester, the only thing you have going for you is your defense. And the hacker got all day to attack. What are some of the challenges? Well, distributed computing environments, part of what we're doing is local, part of it's in the cloud. Part of it now, people work from home. So it creates a lot of problems. Emerging threats, let's face it, the scale just keeps increasing. Kind of like inflation. And the lack of trained personnel. Less of qualified people. Okay, so there's a lack of people in a number of positions out there that are unfilled. That's why a course like Certified Network Defender is so valuable. Continuous cybersecurity, it needs to be adaptive. It needs to be evolving. Okay, there's no such thing as, in fact, the next slide's a little better because this used to be the Cisco security wheel. But you need to predict what's going on. You need to detect what's going on. Yeah, protections are the game. But something happens, you be able to respond. You need to be aware. You need to implement. You need to analyze the implementation of it. You need to draw inferences from it. It's a scientific method, okay, of observe, analyze, predict, and hypothesize, okay, prove, and then analyze further. And it's an ongoing thing. Although there's a technical, administrative, and physical aspect to it. And you might say people, it could be operations, processes, and the technology behind it. Well, technology was got it into this in the first place. But the principles hold true no matter what. Principles hold true since the beginning of time. You may not have had sophisticated, but people had to protect whatever they had, and through being informed as to what the risks were and what their safeguards were. So you have just areas of the policy development. Okay, so this is where it is. I mean, if you don't have a security policy, you really have no basis to start your cyber security defensive position. Right? You need to be able to understand what your information was. You need to have, you might have some regulatory compliance. Okay? You need to know what your employees are doing, okay? And everybody needs to enhance their awareness. Okay? If in real estate, it's location. In cybersecurity, it's awareness. And the three biggest words. And physical, hey, fences, locks, security guards, biometrics, man traps, lighting. We definitely delve into this in the course. Okay? Not quite on the level of the Certified Information Systems Professional certification, but this is really, really important stuff. And on the technical level, access controls, authentication, authorization, this is really how people, the things that people exploit. So we need to know about that. So the PPT triad of operations, the most important is people. People make it go around. And people are what make it, allow it not to work. People are what make it work. Okay? It's people pushing technology and through processes, through an understanding of what it is that we have, how we're going to protect it, okay? When things could happen, okay? How people get in there, and what it is we're trying to do. Okay? Now, defense in depth, okay, is another of the very important principles in the way we build network defense. Okay? So you can see in the bullseye target, there's your data, right? So we said data is the new oil, right? Because really, what's happening with our data? And, people are selling it. Okay? It's worth money. And, the big argument today is should we be compensated for our data? Okay? Certainly, big companies like Facebook and LinkedIn and Microsoft and so on are utilizing that data, monetizing it. Okay? Whether we can get monetized for it or not, we want to make sure that our data is being used to our benefit, whether it's monetization. It could be local or offsite, in the cloud. How's that data protected? Are you backing up that data? And, so that kind of leads us into: do you have a disaster recovery plan? Do you have some business continuity? I mean, what happens when you do lose it? What happens when you get hacked? And do you have a failover? And what's the time scale? How long can you actually operate without your computer systems? And, should you get hacked? How long can so what's your recovery time objective? So these are things you need to know. These are things that are covered. These are things covered in the exam. And these are things that, whether you take the exam or not, these are better things that you're doing. And, so the next rung out, clients, servers, mobile devices. Okay? The devices that are connecting to the network. Okay? So this is, we'll say this could be your local network, but it could also be off-site, could be in the cloud. How are they connected? Are you using any type of endpoint protection? Anti-malware is a good term for it. Today we're calling it endpoint protection. It seems to be the standard. Somebody complained to me. I think it was a LinkedIn quiz, though. Is antivirus needed today? And I simply said, well, we call it endpoint protection today. And there's a distinction, and somebody really kind of bitched about it. They go, hey, it took us years to get users to understand that they needed antivirus. Now changing the name, is only going to confuse people. Okay? But the distinction between endpoint protection and antivirus is that you have malware. A virus is an executable that needs a host, just like a real virus. It needs something to infect, like another program. Many types of viruses. Today, we're not seeing too many viruses, but yet the distinction with a virus is it needs a host. And could be like your notepad, it needs to infect that in some way. A worm. A worm is another form of malware that is network aware. It looks for other network shares. Okay, ransomware utilizes the worm type tools quite well. So it will look for network shares and then spread via networks. Okay? It can spread locally as well as globally. If controls aren't there for it, some worms like Code Red, boom, I think it was like 18 minutes, okay, went global. Ransomware will do it. The big attack on Maersk shipping went global in a very short time, which was just a side product of what was thought to be a nation state attack on Ukraine. Guess who? But shut down shipping worldwide, okay, for a couple weeks. So they had no anti-malware, no patching. It's not things that go on there. It's not just anti-malware. You need to have up-to-date systems. You need to have modern operating systems. Okay, you need to have as few vulnerabilities as possible in those systems, so the you need to have every security patch, okay, that's put out on there because people will exploit them. All right, so as we move to the next, wrong firewalls. So you're going to see that there are many, many types of firewalls. Okay, so this is my last slide, 9. Okay. In fact, they got some BISM firewalls. Okay. This was my last slide. Browsing online activities, best practices. Okay, just really update the browsers, update the apps. And you see on the outside, security policy. Okay. And what's funny is that when we do a penetration test, it's the first thing we look at. Okay, what's the security policy? What's the documentation about? Okay, that's where you start. The defense. Okay, well, you better have a pretty solid line. Okay, or else they're gonna, run through. Don't be like the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay? Terrible team this year. Okay? Too young. Red team and blue team. Okay, so red team is the ethical hacker. Blue team is the certified network defender. Okay, today though you might be a purple team. Okay, where you're doing a little bit of both. Okay, it's nice to have them all, but some you might be put into that. It all depends on the scope, the budget that whoever you're working for, has that. I mean, I do a little bit of some all. Okay? Firewalls, right? You got in the beginning, what we had were packet filtering firewalls. Okay? They simply looked at the content in there and would be able to block it. Look at some bit of code, some bit of information. It might be a port number, it might be an IP address. Okay? Certainly, you don't want to be allowing in a local IP address, into an internal network coming from the outside. Circle level gateways, typically they work at what they call the session level. Once a session is established, they're only looking and examining that. And we moved along to stateful and spectral firewalls. The firewall knows what communication is going out to allow that to back in. Proxy firewalls are a little smarter nonetheless, but as we move up, we went into cloud gen or next gen or NG firewalls. So they're smarter. There's what's known as a cloud firewall, but the next gen is really a combination of them all. A lot of times they're cloud-based. You may have firewalls that you're running, like a pfSense firewall that you're running actually in the cloud, or you may have a cloud cluster that you do some type of tunneling to, so that everything going out of your network is going through a cloud-based firewall. Why cloud-based firewalls are being recommended today is because they're elastic. Okay, so they can do everything, and they are, by elastic, they can handle everything. They can handle malware, they can handle DNS filtering, they can handle content filtering, they can look up blacklisted servers, botnets. So I highly recommend it, to look into that. Usually they tie some type of SD-WAN, software-defined wide area network in there. Such as, some of the other players on the team on your defense, the IDS and IPS, intrusion detection and intrusion protection. So intrusion detection system, looks for rule breakers. Okay? Somebody who's trying to slip through the line. Okay? And will form an alert. Okay? Let you know that that's happening. Okay? They'll exist there somewhere between the firewall and the switch. Okay? Intrusion protection, on the other hand, usually is looking for, it's picking it up, but it's going to actually make a, it's going to block it. It's going to stop it from happening. And so intrusion protection has to be highly tuned. And we want to make sure that we're not blocking things that we want, and we're blocking only the things that we don't want. So it takes a great deal of training to do that. A very important element in your system today. SIM, or system information, event management and logging. So these all get tied together. There's some very high-end tools like Splunk that will allow you to take all of your event logs. It could be your Windows logs, could be your firewall logs, it could be other intrusion detection logs, and usually it's pushed through a syslog and then pushed into some type of log management. Today, a lot of people use Elk, the Elk stack, to do this. There are a number of third-party tools out there like Elasticsearch and Logzio that will allow you to take those logs, drop them into a unstructured database, make sense of it, create some type of dashboard using Kibana or a language that creates dashboards, and allow us to create visual aids, bright bar charts, you know, with a high line, you know that that's, you know, and allow you to drill into those. So SIM is a very, very important tool today in knowing what's going on your network, what's coming in, what's happening in the network, you know, such as users who are typing in bad passwords. Maybe it's somebody trying to crack somebody's account, from somebody scanning the network. It tells you what's going on. It tells you, it really feels the heartbeat. And just like when you go, you know, to the doctor, you get a blood test and they tell you your HDLs, you know, LDHs, you're, you know, at this level, you know, and you have certain risk with this, and you got your blood count, you know. Well, that's what this is doing. It's looking at the bloodstream of the network, and setting certain standards, you know, certain thresholds, okay, and then alerting for that, okay. Very, very important. Okay, you wouldn't go through, you know, a physical without doing this, okay. So you don't want to go through this. Okay? And the last thing really is the, I think, the policy development. Okay? It's from the top down. Okay, if there's no leadership for security policy, there's going to be no security. And it has to be known. And if there's leadership, if management buys into it, there's going to be a budget approved, there's going to be money spent, there's going to be research into what are the best products, the best tools, techniques, you know, for your particular system. You may wind up in this particular area. Certainly we're getting, you know, management is getting smarter. Sometimes though, management sees the expenditures for security as lost money. You know, what do we have to prove for it? Okay, you know, we've never gotten. Okay? What do we have for people to steal? Okay? This is what I see in the medium-sized business. Okay? So it's, I've got like a 20-20-60 rule. You know, there's 20% wants to spend, you know, knows that they want to do the best thing they can. 20% will, 60% will do what's needed. You know, they'll marginalize it. And there's 20% at the bottom that just doesn't want to spend anything, you know, and they're the ones that always have problems. They're the ones that are always compromised. And they're the ones, for me, as a security consultant, I just leave right off the bat, you know. There's nothing to sell. There's just really those that other 80% really that want to do the right thing. We just try to help them as best as we can, you know. Here's the right approach to it. Okay? What's your security program? Okay? What kind of training is involved? How about, you know, user training? How about training actually for security leadership? Help, you know, we want to be able to manage to really develop those policies. And even though there are policies, okay, those policies have to be updated. They change all the time. Things happen. You know, people leave. You know, the policy says, who are your users? Okay? What's your password policy? Okay? There should be information about everyone in management as to who heads up the disaster recovery group. What's their address and phone number and so on. And so how about a big area of security monitoring? You know, you may wind up in this area, security administration, where it's implementing these things, you know. And really, does your policy have any teeth in it? Okay? What if there is you're not supposed to scan networks or change your password or not use social media? You know, I mean, what if are there controls to do that? Sometimes automated, sometimes just the employee handout says you're not supposed to do those things. Okay? What's the punishment? Or what's the penalty? Right? Information asset security, more or less, what do we have on the network? What's our application? What are our databases? What's there? What's important? These are the asset discovery that you need to go through in order to implement a plan. And at the base, right, are physical environmental controls and contingency planning controls. Okay? How are we alerted that things are going askew? And how often do we implement? How often do we run a fire drill? How often do we run a hot site or a cold site test? How often do we actually test for the backup that we can actually bring back what we want? Okay? How often are people trained and tested and you know, tested for their competency? As I said, along with the course itself, we have a series of labs. Okay, there's over 80 labs that are in the course itself. As I say, it's really a 50-50. For me, the lecture is very important. The lecture is getting your knowledge, you know, your knowledge on. Okay, the labs, it's just, I don't know, it's fun. I love doing the labs. Okay? I love just running a course just on labs. Okay? In Certified Network Defender right now, it's 50-50. In Certified Ethical Hacker, which is the red team component to this blue team course, you have a course just on hacking. Just 3 days of just going through labs, and then there's a certified ethical master, in which you actually now it's a 12-hour exam where no, sorry, it's a 6-hour exam where you you got 20 different tasks that you have to do. You have to compromise machines, you have to grab a flag, you have to show files. Okay, it's really pretty cool one of the most fun type tests a person can take. So anyway, that's pretty much it for me. I want to thank you for this part. I'm sure Leela has some follow-up information that she is going to share with you. And I'm sure we got time for some questions and answers as well. And so,
Yes,
Leela,
we sure do. Thank you. And as always, we just love hearing from you, Tom. So much information to cover, and I know there's so much more you could. But we are going to do a question and answer session. But before we do jump into our question and answer session, we are going to hear from Tanmay. He is just going to cover some of our sorry, excuse me. He is just going to cover some of our promotions and webinar related courses for today's webinar. Let me go ahead and pass the presentation rights over to you real quick. You should be able to share your screen now, Tanmay.
I can. Thank you, Leela.
Thank
First
you.
up, am I audible?
Yes.
Great. First of all, happy Diwali from India. And if you hear crackers on my background, it's just my neighbors, not me. Now, for Tom, it's amazing to listen to you. I have a few questions, but I'll just go with one because we are running a bit short on time. I just want to ask you that you mentioned that CND is a blue team certification. Now, the way EC Council has always been talking about CND, it's quite entry level, and so I just want to ask you if CND is entry level, and if yes, do you need a IT background to take up CND, and or if you need a security background to start with CND?
no, one could. It certainly is helpful. It's helpful the more that you know. But no, I'll definitely call it an entry level. But there's a lot of stuff thrown at you. So I wouldn't expect, if you did not have a information technology background and took the course, I wouldn't take the exam on day 5. I would wait. So I would take the course, and then I would do some practice exams. I would take inventory as well. Go, gee, do I understand what these protocols? Do I understand what ARP is? Do I understand what DNS is? And so that would be my advice. Now, on the other hand, if a person did have it, then they could probably take the exam on day 5. Okay, so it all depends on how, sometimes it's run as a boot camp, which means you take the exam on day 5, and then sometimes it's run as a course where you take the exam at your leisure. So that would be my advice to it.
Cool. Thank you so much, Tom. Okay, then I will take you guys to something that would be help you guys can use with. I'm sure you guys love our first look with CND, and hopefully you can see my screen. So we do have a lot of webinars that are coming in, and a number of them are on cybersecurity and security. And since we are talking blue teams, we have quite a few things coming up. So if you come to our website, www.netcomlearning.com, you're going to find the resources section. And you click on it, you're going to get the webinars category, and here you are. So if you scroll down a bit, you can see these are the categories, and you can register yourself for many other webinars, which can be networking. But since we are talking about network security, I'm just going to tell you about the other security webinars that are coming up. So this is about fundamentals of CompShare A+, and later on we do have CompShare Security Plus. So please register yourself if you think security blue team is something that interests you. Now, we did conclude our cybersecurity month on October, but at NetCom Learning, we have extended the celebrations. So again, if you click on NetCom Learning, you can get to our promotion section, and here you are. You have cybersecurity buy one get one. Now you can get 2 courses at the price of 1. So if you click on it, you can get the eligible courses. Unfortunately, CND is not a part of it, but if you are interested in ethical hacking, it's a part of it. And within Cisco, within ComShare, which is another vendor neutral certification, you do have a number of certifications which can be coupled with your needs. You know, if you want a bit of mix of red and blue, you can go for blue team certifications from our ComShare. So that's about it. Please drop us your details, and a learning consultant is going to get in touch with you. And the final thing is, if you liked our webinar today, you can promote. You can promote and refer this to our your team. You just have to get 10 minimum 10 of your teammates, and just have to tell us that you need a curated 2.5 hours of cybersecurity training on just anything. And I'm hopeful that Tom would be available there, for such a curated class. So if your team size is more than 10, if your colleagues, you have colleagues, your self-study group, you can drop in your email IDs, and a learning consultant is going to get in touch with you. So that's all from me, Leela. Hope you liked the webinar, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Tanmay. Okay, we will go ahead and jump right into our question answer session. So if you don't already have your questions in the questions panel, now is the time. And our first one, I'm not sure if we will need Tanmay to answer this. How well does the CND course prepare you for the CEH exam?
Ooh.
Yeah, Tom, you want to take that?
Ooh. You know, actually, the course, I think you could. The CEH exam certainly has its share of technical areas, such as protocols like ARP and DNS and so on, but it also has a lot of questions which are kind of ethically based, you know, such as you are tasked with examining a network in someone's computer, and you found illegal material on there. What should you do? You know, those kind of questions. So I think that CND actually does prepare you for, at least for the technical end of it. And but I think that would be kind of silly to take the CND course preparing for the CEH exam, because the CEH exam, it's an expensive exam. So I would put white horses with white and black horses with black horses. You know, I would prepare for CEH by taking the CEH course and take CND, because CND actually goes a lot more into definitely information assurance and the administrative components. And that's actually some of the newer stuff in it. Makes the exam a lot tougher. And so, yeah, that's my feeling about it.
Thank you. Let's see our next question, and I'm just going to check the time here. We're just going to take a couple more because we are running short on time. How long is the course?
It is a 5-day, 40-hour course. So, it can be broken up. could be broken up. It could be 10 4-hour days, something like that. But normally it's a 5-day course, 8 hours per day.
And will they receive a certification of attendance or completion for this?
Yes, you will. You receive a certificate of attendance from NetCom Learning, as well as from EC Council. And if you take the exam, you will receive a certification certificate that you passed the course.
I'm sorry,
Wonderful.
Leela, is it for the CND first look webinar, the question, or we're talking about CND, the program?
I thought you were talking about the program itself, but
Okay.
yes.
But for today, there is a certification of completion. Isn't that right, Tanmay?
That's correct, but we would like you to drop in your work email in the chat box, and we'll send it to you on your work email. That would be an attachment to the email that we sent.
Okay, so for those of you who are interested in getting that certification of completion, go ahead in the chat and put in your work email that we can send that to you at. Let's see, we'll take a couple more questions and then we will wrap up. Speaking of questions, how many questions are in this exam, Tom?
100.
100, magical number. Okay, and how long is the exam like? How long is it? How hard is it to take?
You get 4 hours. You get 4 hours to take that. I think the average person is usually about 2 to 3 hours. But for every exam I've sat or been involved in, there's always somebody that will take those 4 hours, and God bless you, because that's why you get 4 hours.
Wonderful, thank you. I know I'm a slow test taker, so when I get given, double the time that maybe other people need, I still take every minute of that.
Me too. Yeah.
I like to go back, and the ones that I wasn't sure about, sometimes further questions will remind me of the information that I knew, and then I can go back and
This is one of those exams where you can review. There's a lot of Cisco exams you can't. Whatever you answered question 3, that's it.
Oh, well, then that's a good extra piece of information.
You can review. Yep.
And it looks like we have one other question here that we're going to get to. It's will this certification make me more employable? I think that's what everybody wants to know, right? That's why we're here. Absolutely.
Not only that, for those that have the 8570 Department of Defense requirements, will allow you to keep your job, and satisfy the requirements. So that's one of the big pluses about CND at this point, that it satisfies 4 different requirements for the 8570 requirements.
Wonderful. Well, with that being said, unless you have anything else to add, we are going to go ahead and launch a quick poll to find out how many people might be interested in taking some additional training. And in addition to today's webinar, we have a lot of informative webinars that are coming up. So please go to www.netcomlearning.com/webinars/ to register for any of those. We want to thank you all for joining us today. If you do come up with any additional questions, please feel free to send them to us at webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. We hope you all found today's webinar to be very informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us very soon. Also, feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. Once again, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for Tom and Tanmay. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Adios.
Thank you, Leela.